Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I hope you're all doing very well. So I just watched The Marvels. Let's talk about it. So The Marvels is directed by Nia DaCosta, and it is of course the sequel to 2019's Captain Marvel, which first introduced us to Carol Danvers herself, one of the most powerful characters in the MCU. This is also a follow-up to last year's Disney Plus series Miss Marvel, which introduced us to Kamala Khan, and 2021's Disney Plus series WandaVision, which introduced us to Monica Rambeau, daughter to Maria Rambeau, who was a really close friend to sorry, it's too early to be ridiculous. Really close friend to Carol back in the day. Now, those of you who watched my What I've Been Watching video earlier this year will know that even months back I proclaimed 2023 to be the year of good films flopping. Good films flopping at the box office. And unfortunately, I have been proven right time and time again. My first signal that something was afoot was Dungeons and Dragons. As soon as I saw Dungeons and Dragons did not make $500 million at the box office, I said, something's not right here. Something's not right, okay? And then it continued on. The trend seeped through across 2023 to affect films like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem, which was absolutely spectacular. The Little Mermaid, it breaks my heart. The Little Mermaid didn't make $1 billion because of this curse of 2023 and various other reasons. But then we also had Gran Turismo, which I swore to you was a good film, and unfortunately that film flopped as well. So yeah, we have seen various instances of good films just flopping at the box office, and unfortunately, I'm so sorry to say that The Marvels is continuing on in this trend of 2023 because it looks to be one of the worst performing films for the MCU at the box office, which is a goddamn shame because this film is really good despite the odds, okay? Despite the odds. And if you've watched my Marvel video from earlier this week, then you'll know what the odds were. The odds were stacked against this film, okay? But despite it all, the Marvels emerged victorious, largely, at least creatively, but not so much at the box office, which is really heartbreaking. But listen, I'm not going to sit here and delve on the negative and the horrible toxicity that this film has faced. I don't want to sit here and think about what that means for the fandom that I have been a part of for the last 10 years. What this shows, what this means for me as a black female Marvel fan. I don't want to sit here and talk and think too much about that right now. Instead, I want to dedicate this time to celebrating this film and talking about everything that it did right, as well as some of the issues that I had with it as well, because I think we need more of that positivity and constructive criticism as opposed to negativity and hate. So the story of The Marvels picks up right where we left off in Miss Marvel last year, where we saw that kind of end credits. I don't think it was an end credit scene. It was like a end scene where Carol Danvers somehow emerges from Kamala Khan's room. She's looking around and she's seeing all of this fan art and memorabilia about herself, and she's wondering, how did I get here? After she's burst through the closet door. And so that's where we start off in The Marvels. We see that be recreated, except it's recontextualized because we realize, there's a lot of re's, we realize that it's because Captain Marvel swapped places with Kamala, and Monica was also drawn into this mess because she also swapped places with Captain Marvel, and that becomes the issue of the day for these three characters. Just as Loki had time slipping throughout all of season 2 of Loki, here in The Marvels it's the swapping around situation because they all have light-based powers, and so that somehow has caused this. It's just like Marvel sci-fi, Marvel nonsense, which is fine. You know, I brush off the explanation, no problem. But that's how this story entangles these three characters and brings them together to create this new team. But in addition to this entanglement, you also have the re-emergence of Kamala Khan's bangle being the main MacGuffin once again, as if that worked out so well for the clandestines, whatever. But, you know, this time around we have a second bangle being introduced, which makes sense because if you have two arms, you're going to have two bangles. And this bangle has been looked for and found by Zawe Ashton's Supreme Darbin. I believe her name is Darbin, whatever. Anyways, but she seems to be kind of like a Ronin, the accuser-esque figure. She certainly seems to have the same weapon as him. But she is a Kree. She's from the same planet as Carol Danvers was when she was kidnapped and forced to fight for their army during their war against the Skrulls. But Darbin has a very different perspective because she stuck around the Kree planet of Hala, I think it's called, and she saw how everything fell apart after Captain Marvel destroyed the Supreme Intelligence, which was portrayed by Annette Bening in the first film. But it turns out the Supreme Intelligence was keeping everything together and keeping the planet whole, and as soon as Captain Marvel destroyed it in her heroic efforts, it left the planet with no real life force, and so people weren't even able to breathe in the air. And so Darbin's whole plan is to rob resources from various different planets in order to supplement Hala. And she's specifically and vindictively targeting the planets that Captain Marvel holds most dear to her, because this is also a revenge mission. Like, this lady can multitask, good for her. So the mission of the day is for Carol, Kamala and Monica to come together and figure out how to use their powers in unison, whilst also dealing with the whole swapsy situation that's a huge inconvenience, in order to help the planets that are being targeted if they can, and if not, to try and save the day once the resources have been robbed from those planets, to try and get them back, and perhaps even to fix Captain Marvel's mistakes from the previous film and save the people of Hala. In the meantime, whilst we're following the Marvels on their adventure, we also get a look at Nick Fury, who is now on the Saber base in space, in this sort of satellite in space off of Earth, and he is entertaining. He is hosting the Khan parents as well as Kamala's brother, and it's so great to see them in this film. I mean, we'll talk about it more in a second, but it was so surreal to see them like in the cinema. Last time I saw you guys, you were on my TV screen in my living room, but you're in cinemas now, and that's great, and they are brilliant characters, so I was really happy to see more of them in this world, until it becomes apparent that Saber is one of the places that Darbin wants to target, because Nick Fury and the whole institution means a lot to Carol. And so then they have to figure out a way to get off of that damn satellite and the only way to do so, with very limited resources, with very limited sort of rescue ships, is to be swallowed whole by some baby flurkins in the craziest cat lady scene that you will ever see in anything. Honestly, I've never seen anything like it. And the fact that they were playing Memory from Cats, like from the theatrical production Cats, that was the most perfect musical choice. Like, it was a stroke of genius, truly. It was absolutely phenomenal in just how blatantly ridiculous it was. Like, this film wasn't afraid to be ridiculous. And it did so brilliantly and purposefully that it was actually enjoyable rather than painful to watch, like the live action Cats. But when it comes to what I really enjoyed about the Marvels, first things first, it has to be the interactions and the character dynamics, the team dynamics within the Marvels themselves. I really, really love this team. Truly, like I don't think I was terribly excited to see what the team would be like going into this film. I thought it was an interesting combination, but I don't know, like I didn't have any expectations, neither high or low, for this new team dynamic. It felt a bit mishmash to me. They felt a little bit like the leftovers. And because Carol Danvers was such a solo character in the first film, that it didn't really feel like she needed a team. And that's something that is explored in this film as well. But they do such a great job of incorporating all three of these characters and allowing them all to shine and all to have their purpose and their moment in the film, that I fully bought it by the end. I was like, oh, these guys are great. These guys are great, and obviously it's the shenanigans with the swapping around that forced them to become a team. But even through this mechanism, they were able to work together so well, and they had such great chemistry together as a team, and each and every one of them had their own unique personalities. We'll talk about it in a second, but they all came together in this really interesting ways. Sometimes it was fun, sometimes it was more dramatic and sad, but it just created such a phenomenal team dynamic, and that's what shocked me the most. It's just how well they work together as a team. Like, it's brilliant. So on a more surface level, the team dynamic is great because of course you have Kamala Khan, who is a huge fan of Carol. She is a huge Captain Marvel fan, to the point where she named herself, her superhero persona, after Captain Marvel. And so the whole time when she's on this mission, she's looking at Captain Marvel with these like puppy dog eyes. Like, she can't believe her luck. This would be like if I was on a mission with Beyonce. This would be like, that would be my reaction. And then if for whatever reason we ended up being in the same room, that's how the way that Kamala Khan was reacting, that's me. Hi, that's me. That would literally be me in that scenario. So I loved that because it was real. Like, do you know, it was real. She was a fangirl the whole time, and it was just endearing. But it's also in the way that Iman Vellani plays it, because to be fair, it could be really grating. Like, it could reach the point of being really annoying and obnoxious and just like, oh, shut up, little kid, right? But because she's just so endearing and she just has that heart of gold persona to her, that really shines through. She just seems so adorable, so lovable, and she was one of the best parts of, you know, her series last year, and that continues over to this film, this theatrical release. I think that's what makes it work. So that definitely makes for a very interesting and fun dynamic, and I found that the majority of the comedic moments that my audience really responded to in the cinema was surrounding Kamala Khan. People loved Kamala Khan in my cinema. People, they were laughing it up. Okay, they were having a great old time with Kamala Khan. They were also laughing at the Flurkins, which we'll talk about in a second. But yeah, the Flurkins were also a favorite, but Kamala Khan was definitely the kind of comedic relief, and she did the role really well. But Kamala's fangirling around Captain Marvel was more of a surface level aspect of their dynamic. You have this deeper level as well, which to me was really brilliantly done, and that is the relationship between Monica and Carol. Here is where we get a little bit more of that drama and a little bit more of that kind of pathos as well. Because of course in the first film we saw how close Carol was with Maria Rambeau. They used to be partners, you know, in the Air Force, and we saw how Carol was a part of Maria and Monica's lives when Monica was really young. And so young Monica also very much looked up to Carol, and she called her Auntie Carol. She was a part of the family, until of course this huge thing happened to Auntie Carol where she got the powers of an Infinity Stone, and she was taken by the Kree to fight for their cause whilst not being able to remember anything that happened on Earth in her life prior. And after that huge traumatic incident happens in Carol's life, she finds herself, you know, running around the galaxies trying to help the Skrulls, trying to save more planets. You know, she becomes this persona of Captain Marvel, but deep down she's running away from Earth and running away from her history, her past there, and she's left some people behind, including Monica, who is deeply hurt by the disappearance of Auntie Carol, especially because Monica deals with her own traumatic incident in the form of her mother getting sick with cancer, not once but twice. which is just absolutely horrible. And so you have that scene where they're using the memory device that Carol has, with her as she tries to piece back the pieces of her life that she lost when she was with the Kree. And they're using it to try and put together their experiences as they've been jumping across different places and swapping places. And then you have that scene where Carol's memories start to divert and go back to seeing Maria on Earth, seeing Maria who's much older and she's sick. And ultimately you see that Maria didn't make it, and that's where we rewind back to the scene that we got in WandaVision, which was so sad even there, where Monica wakes up in a hospital in a chair right next to a bed where her mother used to be, and her mother passed away in the 5 years that she was snapped away, so she didn't even get to say goodbye. So all of that just kind of gets drawn out in this memory sharing session, and like I said, it just brings such pathos to the dynamic within the team, and it just makes it so much heavier and so much more meaningful, as this conflict that they need to kind of get over in order to work together again. Because at first, when it comes to Monica seeing Carol again after all of those years, there is a lot of tension there, and she's really reluctant to just jump in and see her, but they have to figure things out, and I think that was so real, and so brilliantly carried out. And again, it all makes sense because of the aspects of the story that we've seen so far in WandaVision and in the first Captain Marvel movie. You could tell that this was the stuff that Nia DaCosta was most interested in. Like, you could tell that this was the meaty stuff that she really wanted to get into between the characters of Monica and Carol. Like, she really wanted to dive into the conflict within this relationship, and I think she did a brilliant job of exploring that, both through her directing and writing of this film. And so this tension between Monica and Carol introduces a new facet or a new tension in Carol's relationship with Kamala as well, because all of a sudden it's not baby Monica who's looking up to her with these big, brown eyes full of admiration. It's now Kamala, and you have the scene where Kamala is speaking to one of the Skrull refugee children, and she's telling the child, don't worry, Captain Marvel's on the case, she's gonna save you, she'll do whatever she can. And you can see Carol's face as Kamala is saying all of this, and she doesn't believe Kamala's words because she knows better. She knows how some of her actions have had detrimental effects on people. And speaking of the team dynamics, another thing that really enamored me towards this team was the fact that everyone was so different. Each of these ladies had different personalities. Now, this is something that I touched on in my Miss Marvel review, I believe, where I did comment that whilst I think it's great that we have so many of these young female characters, especially from different ethnic backgrounds, being introduced into the MCU, and clearly with purpose, clearly the Young Avengers are coming, we'll talk about that in a second. Also, I think that's absolutely wonderful. I did take issue with the fact that so many of these characters seem to have such similar personalities. I think that's the case for Kamala Khan, America Chavez, and for Kate Bishop. They are very similar characters, and I think the Marvels demonstrates why it's so important to have characters with completely different personalities come together and be forced to work together, because it's just so much more entertaining and so much more interesting when you have that dynamic, as opposed to a team of people who are just identical, who all think identically. It's not as much of an accomplishment when they work together in that way. And of course, whilst I'm singing the praises of this team and how much I really enjoyed them on screen together, I have to mention the actresses themselves, because I think all three of them did a phenomenal job portraying these characters. I loved the evolution of Carol Danvers, the fact that she's still holding on to her past to some extent. That's why she had that memory device that is technically a Kree torture device, whatever, we look past that. But she's still trying to piece things together, just like the Winter Soldier, and her past is still very tragic, but she's still Captain Marvel. She's clearly garnered a reputation for herself across the cosmos as this extremely powerful being, and so she still has a job to do. And to be fair, when she does see Monica for the first time in like 30 years or so, she's really excited, and she wants to kind of jump right back in to where they were in the 90s. But of course, too much has happened since then, and so there's quite a bit of tension. But I think Brie Larson plays this role so well. I love that she was able to have a lot more personality in this film in comparison to the first Captain Marvel film, where one of my biggest critiques was that she was just so monotone, and that was a function of the script itself, because she had, you know, forgotten everything and she had no personality because she was just a Kree soldier. But it did make for a less interesting character to be engaged with for that film. So I'm glad that they were able to give her a bit more of a spark this time around, as well as still maintaining some of the complexities of the character that make her so interesting. And then we have Kamala. Miss Iman Vellani nailed it. Like I said, she was a favorite in my cinema. She was a favorite in my cinema. I love the lines. I love everything about her. Okay, she is so cool, and she was able to match up. You know, she was there standing toe to toe with Academy Award winner Brie Larson. Like, do you know how hard that is? But she managed to pull through and really had a movie star presence to her. That is absolutely phenomenal. Hats off to her. I love the way that she used her powers in this film as well. I like the fact that they didn't just restrict her powers to the stretchy hand things that she has in the comics. I much prefer the powers that she has in the MCU. And at the end of the day, she was kind of at the center of this story, because it's all to do with her grandma's bangles and finding the other one. And so when she did have that scene in the end where she needed to use both of the bangles, and she has that moment where she says, you know, these bangles traveled through space to find me, I was made for this, or whatever. It was really powerful stuff. It was really powerful stuff, and again, it tied straight back to her series on Disney Plus. So I think narratively it worked really well. And also, I couldn't help but notice, okay, speaking of the Disney Plus show, that they reintroduced some of the fun elements that we got from the pilot of that show with Kamala's illustrations, in order to show how much of a fangirl she was for Captain Marvel in this movie. And that was welcome, because I think many of us were disappointed to see that the showrunners for Miss Marvel did not keep up the energy that they had for the pilot for the rest of the series. And so when I did see that cute little scene where she's illustrating things and talking about, oh, twinsies, that reminded me of the pilot of Miss Marvel that got me so excited to begin with. And of course, I can't go any further without giving Miss Teyana Paris her flowers, can I? I absolutely love Monica Rambeau. Duh, of course I do. I love Monica Rambeau. I loved her in WandaVision, and I loved her here. Now, she is more of the straight shooter. She's very serious. Obviously, she has that tension with Carol because of their history, but also, you know, she's very true to the character that we were introduced to in WandaVision, who was working for, not Shield, Sword, that's it, Sword at that point. And so we see, you know, she's a straight shooter, and she's very intelligent and accomplished so much, obviously inspired by Carol, but also her mother, Maria Rambeau. And she's also been through a lot, you know, not just with her mother's death, but also Wanda, you know, taking over her mind. Like, remember when that happened? Remember when I told you that Wanda was the villain of WandaVision and no one believed me? Anyway, so Monica has been through it, and like she's above the BS at this point. But I did love seeing her interacting with Kamala, and that little gimmick that they had where Kamala was trying to give her a superhero name. We've seen it before, but it makes sense with the character of Kamala because she is like a fangirl of kind of the MCU, but within the MCU itself. So I think it works for the character, and it gave them, you know, something to interact about, which I think was really effective. And on top of all of this, on top of all of her cute interactions with Kamala and her emotional interactions with Carol, Monica really stood out on her own because of the way that she used her powers in this film. Her powers are so cool. And honestly, all of their powers are cool. Again, like, Nia DaCosta really figured out a way to allow all of these ladies to shine, to have their moments. And Monica's powers were used really brilliantly. The way that she was phasing through things, and the way that she was able to see different wavelengths of light. You know, I don't buy the whole they all have light-based powers thing. Like, that's a bit vague. But I do think that this film does a good job of kind of homogenizing their powers, but also allowing them to, you know, shine in their own moments throughout the film. And then of course at the end we see Monica making the ultimate sacrifice. Oh no, another amazing character making the ultimate sacrifice. First Loki, now Monica. She's stuck in a different dimension timeline thing. Yeah, you know, that's something that happened. She's stuck in a different dimension. Unfortunately, they weren't able to get her out, and she finds herself in a hospital bed, just like Marie at the end of Gen V. Hey, this is traumatic for me as a viewer. Okay, too much is happening within these last few weeks to my favorite characters. But yeah, just like Marie found herself on a hospital bed, confused, dazed and confused, so did Monica, except this time around she's sitting next to none other than her mother, Maria Rambeau, which marks the return of Lashana Lynch once again. Marvel wasted Lashana Lynch and they have regretted it ever since. Listen. They have taken every opportunity to bring her back, and rightfully so, because Lashana Lynch, you will not find a bigger fan of Lashana Lynch than me, than moi. You won't. It doesn't exist. Anywho, so you see Maria Rambeau sitting next to Monica, and she is just overcome with emotion. Like, Mom, how can you be there? Like, what's going on? Except it becomes clear that it's not really Maria Rambeau, and it is in fact an X-Men. I don't know which X-Men she is. Apologies, I didn't actually look up which X-Men she's supposed to be. Is she Mystique? She's either Mystique or Storm or something. I don't know, but let me know if you know. But yeah, that was the big reveal in the end credits scene, and moments later we also see the introduction of Beast. So Monica is in the X-Men verse. Monica has found herself in the universe with the X-Men. I can't wait to see what comes of that, honestly. And I think it's great that Monica is the character who first jumps into the X-Men verse. That's really exciting. Maybe she'll be in Deadpool 3. Well, whatever they do, okay, with that character, I'm really excited to see more of her, because Teyonah Parris is an icon, quite frankly, and she was brilliant in this film. But aside from the Marvels themselves, another thing that I really loved about this film was just how unapologetically kind of girl power, but also ridiculous. Sometimes a bit Disney Channel, if I'm being honest, but I just love how it committed to this fun tone. Like, we were having fun. I was smiling ear to ear. Like, this was just brilliant to me. I really connected with this film. I really connected with this story, and I loved how outrageously ridiculous it was. I loved the flirking scene. And I feel like this was what The Flash was trying to do with the baby scene. Remember that? That was a disaster. That didn't work at all. First of all, the special effects were nowhere near as good as the special effects for the Flurkins, so there's that. But also, you know, just comparing these two scenes, it goes to show you just how hard it is to hit those comedic beats, because whilst the Flurkins scene worked, you know, seeing these adorable little kittens swallow up these human beings with the tentacles coming out of their mouths, it was so absurd and so hilarious, and the audience loved it. But the baby scene didn't work in The Flash for various reasons, and so it just goes to show you that this stuff is actually hard to do, to be ridiculous and be funny and effective and clever, and I think the Marvels accomplished it beautifully. But as crazy and ridiculous and hilarious as the Flurkin scene was, my actual favorite ridiculous scene in this film took place in the planet of Aladna. I love the planet of Aladna, and I also loved Prince Yan. Come a little closer. I loved Prince Yan. Prince Yan, listen, okay, let me keep this serious. I'm a reviewer. Please, Jean, keep it together. Prince Yan was kind of everything. Let's be real. Prince Yan was everything. It's so hilarious when it's revealed that Carol is married to this prince. But it is a marriage of convenience, to be fair, because in a world where all is right and just, she would actually be married to Valkyrie. But anyway, we're not going to talk about that today, are we? And Valkyrie's presence was very much welcomed, okay, in this film, where she went and took the scrolls. And that was what I was thinking. Sorry, I'm going on a divergent. But that was what I was thinking during Secret Invasion. I was like, oh, so the world has resources to house Asgardians, but not the Skrulls? Like, I'm sensing a bit of Skrull racism there, because the Asgardians are up in Norway and no one's saying anything about that. No one has any problems with that. But when it comes to the Skrulls, it's like, oh, they have to hide. There's no room for them. They're refugees in the middle of a wasteland in Russia. Like, hey, what's going on there? But anyways, so we do see Valkyrie show up as the king of New Asgard, and she looks incredible as always. I love her. I hate how she was wasted in the last Thor film, but still love her. So yeah, in a world that makes sense, they would be a couple officially. But in the meantime, we have this marriage of convenience with Prince Yan, which I also wasn't against, because like, Prince Yan? And the fact that the planet speaks in musicals, like that's their language. And they had that dark sequence where Carol is wearing a dress version of her costume, which I hated, by the way. I hated the second costume that she had in this film. I think she had the worst costume of the three, which was just like inexplicable. I was like, did Nia DaCosta hate her or something? Because like, why is she giving her that costume? Anyways, but the dress version was stunning and also ridiculous, and I absolutely love that entire sequence. And finally, another thing that I really loved about this film was the presence of the Khan family, particularly the Khan mother. She was brilliant in the series, and she was just as brilliant here. I mean, she is the one that brings that emotional core for the character of Kamala and kind of brings her to earth. But yeah, she's such a phenomenal character, just consistently worried about her daughter, but also, you know, proud of her, which she's come a long way considering the journey that their relationship went through in the series. So it's wonderful to see her being more supportive and encouraging of her daughter's superhero antics, even if it is insane that her house was destroyed in an afternoon by some goons. In the end, they get a brand new house in the middle of Louisiana. I don't know if these Jerseyans, okay, had any plans to move to the south, but they have a massive house in Louisiana, which is perfect for her son to raise a family in. So so they can do with that what they will. I really love the Khan family and their antics with Nick Fury. I thought the scenes in Saber were particularly silly, and I think Nick Fury as a character is just doing whatever he wants. Samuel L. Jackson is just doing whatever he wants at this point, and like, fair enough. And also, what struck me is that Samuel L. Jackson really has on-screen chemistry with everyone. That's wild. Like, how many generations of actors has Samuel L. Jackson acted against and just been brilliant with them? Do you know what kind of star power that takes? Because the way that he was just interacting with the Khan family, it felt just as natural as when he was interacting with the Avengers, or when he was interacting with Carol in the first film. And that's talent. Like, that's Samuel L. Jackson's talent of just being an extremely charismatic actor in whatever he's in. So like, yeah, that's what I guess I also wanted to shout out Samuel L. Jackson. I don't know if you heard of this young kid, but I think he's going places. Okay, he's a decent actor, this guy. But nonetheless, I still don't forgive Nick Fury for the nonsense that he pulled with the Skrulls, because he's quite frankly just as bad as Yon-Rogg. Okay, when it comes to his treatment of the Skrulls, he also used the Skrulls to his own benefit and gave them nothing in return, because they're still space refugees with nowhere to turn to apart from New Asgard now. Okay, so as you can see, overall, I really enjoyed this film. I had a really fun time with it, guys, and I was surprised because I had pretty low expectations. I'd heard so much about the behind the scenes, but I was so happy to see that it was far more enjoyable and so much more heartwarming and kinetic than I expected it to be. But still, all that does not a perfect film make. I do still have some critiques of the film. First of all, we have the villain, who's portrayed by Zoe Ashton, and this actually kind of breaks my heart because Zoe Ashton is Marvel royalty through marriage. Zoe Ashton is married to Tom Hiddleston, and this isn't coming from a place of jealousy, I promise. This isn't coming from a place of jealousy, I promise. Even though Zoe Ashton is like, what, mixed race? And that... Does that mean I had half a chance? Anyway, listen. Let me be professional. I'm being so unprofessional in this review. Oh my goodness. Anyway, she's married to Tom Hiddleston, who obviously portrays one of the most iconic characters in the MCU. So in my head, I'm thinking like, you know, she should have picked up a few things from him. Like maybe over dinner, like maybe when we're watching TV, going over lines. Like she should have, you know, picked up some tips and tricks because he's low-key. Like, if there's anyone who's gonna teach you how to be a villain in the MCU, it's it's him. But unfortunately, because of the script, to be fair, but also just because of her acting, I don't think she made for the best villain. I think she was playing it too traditional, like mwahaha type of bad guy, and there just wasn't enough depth there and enough nuance in the character. And I think the script, on the script side of things, doesn't help just because of how little screen time she has. She doesn't have enough time to make herself known as a presence, let alone a threatening presence. And it also doesn't give her a lot of a backstory. I mean, we see that she was present when Carol destroyed the Supreme Intelligence, thereby destroying Hala. But there isn't enough meat to her backstory to give her substance and emotionality as a character and to make her empathetic in any way. Even though she's one of those MCU villains who are kind of right about the hero. Oh, and speaking of, I did forget to mention in my positive side of the review that I really liked that development. The fact that we, reassess the events of the first Captain Marvel film and see Carol Danvers' actions through the perspective of the Kree people, because they really suffered as a result of what she did on their planet. And the fact that she had to do a Black Panther and go back and fix the situation was really heartening and really effective. But it is a shame that she didn't have, more screen time and more of a connection to the villain for that to have been more impactful as it was with Eric Killmonger, for instance, and his interactions with T'Challa. Another critique of the story would be that it was way too rushed, especially the final act. I feel like they really could have taken their time to really stretch it out and allowed it to have emotional resonance instead of rushing things. Because you do have that scene, for instance, where Fury finds out that Monica wasn't able to come back, and it's very emotional for a second, but then they jump to the Louisiana scene where Kamala's family is moving into the house that's now vacated because Monica isn't going to be there, so they might as well use the house somehow, and it kind of feels inappropriate because it's like, oh, just a second ago we were mourning the loss of one of your teammates and now we're having fun and starting a barbecue in her deceased mother's house. Okay. I think we needed, just a little bit more time to let things sit and resonate. And I'm starting to think that that's kind of a lost art in films these days. Like, a lot of films suffer from this issue of trying to wrap things up in the third act and not just allowing us as an audience to sit with these emotions and the consequences of what we have seen play out in the film or in the TV show. And I think a brilliant example of the effectiveness of this was the Loki season 2 finale, which absolutely nailed this, but everything else seems to be fumbling with this issue. It's very bizarre. Aside from some of these story issues and the script issues, I would say the biggest problem that I had with the Marvels was the fact that it just did not feel cinematic enough. I had a major issue with the production side of things. The things that I usually praise, mind you, the costume design, hair, makeup, production design, apart from Aladdin, which was really brilliantly done. Most of all of these more technical aspects of this film felt really underwhelming and felt kind of TV movie level, and that was really surprising to me. I feel like if we had the same level of production as Guardians of the Galaxy or even Thor Ragnarok, which felt a little bit like makeshift and rough around the edges at times but still worked on a cinematic level, I think then that would have elevated the film substantially, because I think the material was there script wise, but instead it just felt so TV. I think a step up from TV, but like production wise it felt on the level of Blue Beetle. That's a comparator that I would make, and also in other aspects as well, like with the Khan family and Kamala falling from the sky. Anyways, but yeah, it felt a lot like Blue Beetle production wise, and Blue Beetle was very impressive with some of the CG and VFX and everything, just like the Marvels was. But largely speaking, Blue Beetle felt like the streaming movie that it originally was, and paradoxically, the Marvels was never meant to be a streaming movie, but somehow it was produced just like one. And I think this might be a consequence of the multiple reshoots that they had to do for this film. You know, I noticed that Brie Larson's hairstyle changed ever so slightly throughout the film, and I think it's, you know, a marker of the different reshoots that they had to do. But still, this isn't the first MCU film that had to go through reshoots, but yet it feels like the least cinematic MCU film that we've gotten for a while. So with all of that being said, I'm going to be giving The Marvels a 7.5 out of 10. So that's it from me, guys. Now that I told you guys my thoughts on The Marvels, it's time for you guys to let me know what you thought of this film down in the comments below. Please be sure to subscribe to catch new videos coming up. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.